Morning, Gitika. Morning, sir. Pleasure to have you with us. Thank you, Gitika. When a conference opens with you, it's always a sign that everything's going to be perfect. So thank you very much. And over to you, sir. We at the event industry would like to welcome you back to the culture ministry because having you back at the culture ministry, heading the country's culture mandate, uh, puts the spotlight back on our industry. It puts the spotlight where it should belong, the fabric of the country, the fabric of what we do, what we represent, and the values that we represent. And some may call you an evangelist, some may call you a czar of culture. But for me, you've been a friend to the culturati and anyone who believes in culture. And with that, on behalf of everyone, I really want to welcome you back as Secretary Culture. And with that, I'd just like to put the spotlight on you and request you to share your vision for India's culture capital and what are we going to treat as capital for us to be able to build a cultural mandate and a culture economy for our country.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure. It's a bright day out here in Delhi. Things are appearing positive. The last 10-15 days, it's actually been a long spell of good weather, though it's been cold, but yet quite bright. So on that note, what do I think of the coming 1 year? I have, since I've taken over the position in the Ministry of Culture, I've been trying to change the approach from looking at culture as something which is government's responsibility. So once you start looking at culture as government's responsibility, then you have to keep on finding ways and means of funding or at least sustaining the onus or the responsibility you've taken, right? And obviously, we all know that there's a fund crunch, but more than the fund crunch, there is a crunch of institutional structure to look after our culture. Just to give you a small example, I mean, we talk about 5,000 years of culture, but in our museums, do we display it? Do we display it well? Do we have proper curatorial skills with us? Do we have proper conservators? Do we have proper, set of people who are, into visitors experience or, doing the programming, security aspects? We don't have it. So, as I said sometime before, that if we consider this sector of museum as a sector of medicine and consider museums to be medical college, we don't have doctors. So if you don't have doctors, then what is the use of having a medical college?
True.
So to address the institutional structure and sort of strengthen it, it doesn't sound very glamorous, but it is most necessary. So that is what I am actually concentrating on. I'm concentrating on things which are unglamorous. I'm concentrating on things which have a long timeline. There are no quick fixes to it. Just to give you another example, suppose if you are creating a museum, how does one create it? In these days, we created the National Museum of Indian Cinema, or we are creating so many other museums. The state government creates them, central government creates them, it gets created in the private sector. When it gets created in the private sector, all these things which I just talked about get taken care of. But when we create it, then we hire a consultant. That consultant may or may not, in most cases, he has no idea of, he has an idea, but he's really not worked in that sector of museology. But then he still takes the onus of creating a museum. And then he helps us create a museum through our funding. And then he goes away. And then without the institutional structure, then the whole thing kind of tends to weaken. So, so that is the whole idea, to create organizations within the government which also specialize in in the sectors they are working in. They should be they should be skilled organization, not necessarily from the government, and they should have a structure where they can actually over a long period of time exist without interference. So you have to build in those legal aspects within the structure. So I'm trying to do all that at this moment. And then last thing, create or incubate such projects in the sector. Suppose if you have a building, say for example, or an area which is iconic and heritage-like, or it is heritage. So obviously, if it is heritage, you would find that there's a town hall which is in the center of the town. Of the state capital, say Simla, for example, and then you restored the building, you incubate a project through good startups, and then you actually put it out for mainstreaming it through capital investment. So it does not actually become a CSR initiative, it actually becomes a proper initiative for people to invest in culture. So the idea is to bring stakes in this sector, which has really not happened till yet. So that's what I'm actually intending to do. It's an uphill task, but that's the way I'm headed.
It's been your dream to literally bring private sector and public sector together to work in the cultural space. I think you tried it, especially in the museums that you were curating and leading in the last couple of years. And where do you find that? Do you find the gap in private sector, or do you find the gap? We at least in the private sector would normally fault the government. There's no structure, there's no clarity, there's no transparency, there is too much funding to be required, and it's going to take a long time for investment to be recouped, etc. We'll have all of those reasons. But what, in your own experience, are the quick fixes that can be done to build the private-public sector partnership?
I don't think so. There can be any quick fixes. Obviously, the private sector is quite apprehensive, and more so during these challenging times of pandemic.
Absolutely.
So they tend to think that, look, I mean, there's this Raghvendra Singh sitting here. He's sort of bending backwards, asking us to come together. God knows what his stakes are in it. These are apprehensions. God knows what his stakes are in it. Maybe after a year and a half, 2 years, he may not be there. Now, if another gentleman who comes in his place, if he is more regulatory in his approach, then would there be suddenly a change in the the whole
policy and approach?
Policy and approach. So all these things are there. You see, so you cannot really have something which is a quick fix kind of a thing. But what I'm trying to say is that, look, you see a cultural space. Just to give you one example of Kolkata. Now, right on the place where the old Howrah Bridge sits, we have a 13-acre property called the Old Mint. Now, if you see the Old Mint building, it has 55 Doric pillars. I mean, you see, it's hard to come by 10, 15 pillar property. This property has 55 of them and was built in early 19th century. And it has another 10 structures over there. Now, what I have done and got approval for is to restore that property. Now, once you restore that property, and as I said, you incubate certain good proposals with very sound return on investment, and then you bring it to the private sector. That here it is, look for yourself, you enter into an agreement which legally protects your interest, only then do it, and treat it as a sound proposition of investment in this sector of culture. Now, here, I would perhaps beseech and entreat the private sector that for 5 or 6 of these kind of proposals, which to my mind are foolproof, it is for the private sector to satisfy itself whether what I'm saying is correct or not. But at least they should take interest, they should study those proposals, they should study the potential that those places have, whether it is in Pondicherry, whether it is in Kolkata, whether it is in Bhopal. So we have about 50 to 60 of these proposals where we are offering the location, we are offering the building, we have invested in those buildings, we've restored those buildings, and those buildings are not back up beyond that you have to go 6-8 hours from the state capital or the capital here to sort of reach that place. No, they are back center. So to my mind, I think they are great business propositions. And I'm not saying that, take recourse to CSR, etc., etc. No, if you can make money, come in. That's what my approach is. But for God's sake, believe me, and at least study, evince some interest in the proposals I'm bringing forward.
I think you entered the museum business. I'm calling it a business, okay, because it should be at probably the perfect time when India was looking at these possibilities. And then came the pandemic, and it became the worst time to be proposing anything like this, which had a long term, which had some investments to be put in to the projects, and it is to some extent it's stillborn, or it's not yet begun its journey. I think the time will come for that. And with all that you're doing with the Nehru Museum for the Prime Minister's legacy that you're trying to, the Prime Minister's Museum, I think what is being attempted is to be able to move from just museum of artifacts and displays into an experience center. And if you could share some light on these experience centers that you're trying to create within these museums, I think it will open the minds of several of my event industry colleagues about the opportunity that lies ahead.
So two immediate examples come to my mind, and both are in Delhi. Of course, a lot of our friends who joined today would be from all over the country. So I would subsequently expand on areas outside of Delhi. So within Delhi, I would talk of this place, which is just next to the National Museum on Janpath. Now, in between the National Museum and the Vigyan Bhavan, there is this huge swathe of territory which actually housed an old building where from the Archaeological Survey of India used to operate. And then they got their new building next to the Supreme Court, and this shifted. Now, this building in the last year has been restored, and we are actually now offering it to the private sector to come in and sort of take it up for exhibitions, take it up for any kind of activity, whether it's literary activity, whether it's for cultural activities, and I'm also offering. We just going to come out in another 5-7 days or so. For a cafeteria, and I would want the youngsters. I mean, I would not want people with high turnover. I want the youngsters, who are keen and passionate about food, to sort of come and take over the cafeteria and run it. And so this is one place which is a huge place, because it number one has about 25,000 square feet of built-up area, and it has huge ceilings, and one hall leads to the other. So on one side we have five halls, on the other side also. So it's a beautiful feeling when you enter that place, and I've tried to sort of restore it as best as possible, as best as the government can do, because if I had gone in for restoring it the way proper restoration is done, then it would have taken years. But I was slightly in a hurry. I must say some things have been overlooked, etc. So that is. The second one is even more radical. This is a 100-room building in the Red Fort. Now, this is a British barrack created after 1857, which was really derelict. We restored it. It has 100 rooms. Now, this is a design center. Now, what is a design center? So we are actually populating that building with the wherewithal that all our indigenous geographical indicator tag products, whether it's the design which is being actually developed in Pochampalli, or whether it's the temple jewelry, whether it's all kinds of weaves of Banaras, toys, ornaments, food stuff. So whatever is indigenous to us and which is tagged, like the way Darjeeling tea is tagged, or like the way the sparkling wine from Champagne is tagged. So it's like that. So I'm calling it the design center, because where we face problem is that we don't contemporize, right?
Yes.
And there we face the problem with regard to our own marketability in the domestic market as also overseas. So this is a huge project where I want the private sector to actually come in, and this is a very radical project where the artisan would be actually interacting with a guy who's a musician,
Correct.
and the two would develop something. A musician would be interacting with an architect, and so it's as radical as that. And the idea is that all the NID people and whoever is creative within the creative industry, we are all coming together, and 95% of them are from private sector area, and they're so this is Pondicherry, for example, all the seafront properties which there are.
Yes.
And we've sort of interacted with the government over there. So that's on offer. The Fort St. George properties in Chennai, that's on offer. So, you see, the idea, maybe there's, I perhaps I'm also not being able to reach out to the private sector as much as I should, but I'm trying to at least.
I think we at the event industry will try our best to help you take your message and take these ideas to our industry to start with.
One more thing, and in say Red Fort, for example, now that's actually the first cultural space in our country, because all the British barracks, etc., they've all been restored, and permanent exhibitions and museums are coming up. So in the open spaces, all kinds of activities can take place, and that's the place where your industry can help us.
Sure, absolutely. I'm coming to a very basic problem. The pandemic has laid low an entire industry as a whole. To start with, the culture ministry and the culture industry, and I'm going to call it an industry, is really populated by people who are daily wage earners, be it as performers, be it as artisans, be it as event managers, be it as culture creators, sound and technicians and lighting, etc. All literally daily wage earners, all of whom have been kind of jobless for the last 1 year. And the likelihood of them not being able to take off in a large way for the majority, and that's 95% of them, is probably another 6 months. That's what it looks like. I mean, with the lockdown and the unlockdown and then further lockdown and even further clampdown and curfews in cities like Mumbai, etc. Obviously, the challenge is great for the government, and it'll have to keep dealing with that on a different basis. The people who populate the culture economy are at an all-time low. What can the culture ministry do to be able to elevate their problem, to sort them out on a day-to-day basis, one, and to also be able to create hubs wherein and opportunities that can look after these artists, artisans, event managers, technicians who really populate and and that really constitute this industry?
You see, this is a problem I've been quite mindful of. We have a mission called the National Mission on Cultural Mapping, um, and what we are supposed to do in this mission is to create a database of various artists. So it's obviously not meant for established artists. It's meant for artists who are in pursuit of something creative, right?
Yes.
And it's as wide or overarching as any national mission can be. Now, think of what you just said, right? And connect it to what I'm attempting to do now. So I'll give you one or two cases on which I've embarked upon. What I've said is that, say, in Tamil Nadu, there are a set of artists, and in Kashmir Valley, there are another set of artists. I mean, this is what I'm trying to do.
Sure.
Now, we have a program which is called Ek Bharat Shresht Bharat. I don't know if any of you
Yes,
have
I'm familiar with it. I'm familiar.
This is something which is very, very dear to our Prime Minister. It's an initiative to bring culturally various parts of India together. Now, I'm trying to build this synergy of Ek Bharat Shresht Bharat with the National Mission on Cultural Mapping. I'll tell you what I'm attempting. Now, we have these artists from Kashmir. So what I've told them is that your state is paired, your UT is paired with Tamil Nadu. Now, it's very easy that you went and performed there, right? But that's not what I want you to do. I want you to learn some of the easy art forms of Tamil Nadu and perform in Kashmir Valley. You get the point?
Yes.
And similarly, I want the Tamilians to learn Kashmiri art forms and perform in Tamil Nadu. Right?
Yes.
Now, these guys are, accompanying artists. Right? And their numbers are huge. So what I'm doing is that I'm mapping them, creating a database for them. I'm shooting what they're doing, and then I'm going to put it out on the digital platform. But while they are performing, etc., I'm also paying them because those guys are in such financially dire strait.
I'm glad
that they don't even have monies to pay for the houses which they've rented.
I'm glad they're being compensated.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is being actually tried out. I'm glad to take over, you see, the initiative which comes from your industry. Because after all, the people involved in your industry are creative and therefore they are artists.
Absolutely.
In their own right. Isn't it?
Absolutely.
I'm absolutely open to this idea. If you want to do something, you want to, get them all together so that they then create something, and you would obviously help them create. Government will partner you and take up certain ventures which can help them eventually financially. Yes, very much so.
I'm glad to hear this, sir. I think
because if at this time I don't do this, then when the hell do I do it?
Correct. This is the only time people need you desperately, one. And two, it's the only time when people have time to do it. Time to learn, time to be able to.
I'm game. I'm absolutely open, and I'll put my best foot forward to take on some proposals which you bring forth.
I'm taking as feedback from you innovation, ideation, investment, partnership, and collaboration are values and ideas and an approach that you are welcoming, and you want the event industry to partner with you.
Absolutely.
Having said that, I have to say something. I mean, working with the Skills Council for Media and Entertainment, normally when we look at many sectors, we don't have the talent and they've not been trained. I think willy-nilly the culture ministry has the event industry as a perfect partner to ideate, create ideas, create business possibilities and opportunities to be able to build a kind of momentum and kind of projects that can be captained and led to success. And the event industry provides you probably the best minds, entrepreneurial minds, which are very difficult to get in the culture and entertainment space. And I think rather than trying to wait for people to be certified and developed, etc., the culture ministry must look at the event industry with open arms and saying, come with your ideas. Here it is. We would like to explore the possibility of working with you and moving this forward, because I think that's the only way one can create 20 more Raghvendra Singhs juniors to be able to take your vision forward.
No, but so what I would actually, in a very specific way, want your industry to do is that choose one or two for say northern region, choose one or two for west, for southern, northeast, and east, and let's actualize it, and let's see what our takeaways and lessons have been.
Yes.
And I'm ready to to do this with your help.
Yes, sir.
And collaborate and fund and what have you. I mean, I'm totally open, totally positive on all this. And with lessons learned, we'll be able to then repeat or replicate it in a much better way.
I'm certain I'd be happy to be a catalyst, and along with our industry body, EMA and Event Capital, come to with these possibilities and we can do it. Yes, definitely. We are very close to our time that we have with you. I know you have a very busy day. I just wanted you to sound the bell for everyone in our industry about what the government and the Ministry of Culture is looking forward to post-pandemic, especially with regard to celebration of India's 75 years. What do you see as how the event industry could possibly collaborate and contribute to your efforts?
See, India 75 is very soon going to be unveiled. I am an incorrigible optimist, and I feel despite the kind of talks which we see on the television the last 48 or 72 hours with regard to fresh onslaught, etc., news train, etc., I still feel that 2021 we are going to enter with a great sense of optimism, because even in our own country we will have this. The vaccines being rolled out, etc., etc. That itself creates a very positive psychological, sentiment and positive sentiment. So that's how I look at it. 2021, and with that, whatever we need to do for India 75 now. There, you see, there is this thing called the Jan Andolan. In Hindi, I would call it that जो भी चीजें हमें जन आंदोलन से जोड़ती हैं, which we can carry out in terms of a campaign, right? That is what we should do, because India 75 is all about the takeaway. Yes. Whatever we do, there has to be a positive takeaway. It has to impact the Indians, and it has to enthuse the Indians in a way where they end up improving themselves. So if it is to do with environment, if it is to do with cleanliness, if it is to do with safety, security, I mean, there are so many other aspects. Those are the kind of things which we are actually going to embark upon and take up. Because these kind of initiatives, which are far more impactful, is what our Prime Minister actually wants us to do.
Awesome. All I can say is the Jan Andolan has begun. We have a great captain in you to be able to guide us for the future. I have to say a big thank you to the Honorable Prime Minister for having pulled you back to the cadre and to lead this initiative at a time that I believe is going to be very crucial. An industry has been reset, a cultural economy is waiting to take over and probably be reset and bloom in full motion. And I think we started right with you at the helm. Glad to have heard your vision today. Over the next few weeks and months, we look forward to participating with you to create a plan. And I can only say that we are delighted to have you back. A partnership is in the offing. Really grateful for you giving us your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
The only thing I can say is that I'm trying to reach out, but if my reach is not sufficient, by entreaty, I'm beseeching you to also reach out to me, and you would forever find me very positive. And on specifics, if you have something, I can go and meet more than halfway through, meet you all, and I'm ready to deliver on that.
Absolutely. We must find more grounds to work. Some of the great work that is being done with culture, even in these times, is done by our wedding industry, which whatever has happened, whether it's 100 people, 50 people, 30 people, have continued to plod and continued to deliver great work across the space. And it has kept these artisans and artists busy with some work wherein they've been able to live through these pandemic times. And I think looking across the entire landscape of events, be it political, be it religious, be it cultural, be it governmental, I think we have a great potpourri that we can put together to be able to create resources, create opportunities, and the way forward. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. God bless and have a super year. This is the year of culture for India.
Warm seasons greetings to all of you.